All right. Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for our lovely hosts, Access, for inviting us and letting us be part of this wonderful gathering today. So we're here to talk about building a user experience unit at a large academic library, and that was the University of Alberta. So in the fall of 2023, U of A created a brand new UX unit, and that is us. It's officially been 1 year, and we're here to tell you all about how it's gone and what we've learned. Oh. Okay, there we go. First, I'd like to take a moment to share a bit about where we're from and respectfully acknowledge that the University of Alberta is located on Treaty 6 territory in Maskwaci, Waskagan, Beaver Hill House, also known as Edmonton, the traditional homeland and gathering place for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. We're grateful to be here with you today on this land that is long served as a meeting place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. Okay, so the plan for today. We're going to start off by talking about how it started. So what led to the creation of our user experience design and planning unit at the U of A, how it's going. So what we've done so far to get established and build momentum. And then we're going to finish off with some tips and takeaways that will hopefully offer some ideas and inspiration for anyone who's considering user experience or trying to get some momentum at your library. But first, we'll take a second to introduce ourselves. So I am Caeleigh Steier. I'm the head of user experience design and planning, and I use she, her pronouns.
And I'm Natasha Nunn. I'm a digital user experience librarian, also she, her pronouns.
Okay, so we're going to address the goat in the room. So UX is an inherently optimistic and vision-driven discipline. So for this presentation, we'd like to invite you to imagine with us, with the help of our adorable AI-generated friends, thank you, Microsoft Copilot, about how user experience is one way to work toward making your library the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
So how we started out with our user experience unit was we didn't have one first. But I'll give a little context of the University of Alberta Library. So we're 7 library locations. We've got an archives, a special collection. One of our libraries is French library. And we have 4 campuses, and then we have 40,000 students about, and the plan is to increase that enrollment by 35% in the next 5 years, I think. So my background is actually as a web developer. I did a lot of work working in projects, kind of digital projects. I worked on a project called the Eugenics Archive. I did work with the Rocky Mountain Repeat Photography Project. And these projects were a lot of them kind of trying to appeal to users and trying to understand how users would use them. And so I was doing usability studies. I was doing accessibility usability studies. And I was just so impressed, especially with that Eugenics Archive project, on how when you watch users use your systems and use your projects, you realize so many things that you didn't know before that. And then when I started working at the library, so that was about 15 years ago, I was just surprised by how insular the library was, how it was a lot of jargon, there was a lot of design by committee, and there was not a lot of let's ask our users. There was not a lot of data analysis. And I just tried to kind of push that. And then we had this kind of huge change. We had our university-wide transformation, service excellence transformation, which means we're going to take all the IT. We're going to reduce your budget and your resources. It was a centralization. So the library, I think our IT is almost half of our IT left at the library, or didn't leave, was asked to leave. So in that process, we're like, how can we be more data driven? How can we do this thing where we're going to do more for less? And I think user experience really is kind of the answers to that. We also had a lot of issues with our discovery system. We had gone from an open source Blacklight based discovery, and then just kind of a very sudden, oh, we can't do that because we don't have the resources anymore. So now we're going to move to EDS, but we have this really complicated collection. We have this really complicated, it just didn't fit. It didn't fit very well. And so there was a lot of user problems. I'll go to the next slide. So what I started to try and do is to just have some small scale usability studies. I just wanted to show that if we can sit down with our users, we're going to learn so much that we didn't know before. We did an accessibility usability study with some people who have disabilities, which was incredible. We also had the Student Library Advisory Council, which is about 18 students. It rotates every year. And I was able to get one of our library leaders to come to that group with me and hear me talk to the students and kind of talk about what they would like. And she was really excited by seeing the students excited and seeing the students wanting to have that kind of like voice in the library. And then she actually came here and had some conversations with the UX librarian here who said, well, if you're going to have a UX unit, don't make it just one person because I feel very lonely. So that was great. And then she kind of was able to push through this idea and get that buy-in from the other library leaders. And so now we're kind of preparing for this new migration to a new LSP. And I think we're in a really good spot as a new unit.
Thank you. Musical microphones, the best. So how is it going? Pretty well, I would say. There's still so much trial and error that we do on a daily basis. We're learning as we go, but overall, I think we've accomplished a lot in this first year, and we're both really proud of that. So when I started out in this role, I was really re-entering the academic library world. So there's a lot to learn and a lot of people to meet. And I also wanted to make the most of my new sort of fresh perspective on the library. So I spent a lot of time observing and documenting what I was seeing. And in the meantime, Natasha was keeping on with the great work she's always done while I got my footing. And that also gave us some time to really coalesce as a team and learn about how each other like to work. So, sorry. One of the other things that I did to start off was, a fairly lightweight assessment using the Nunn Learning Group UX maturity model as a systematic framework to assess where the user library was at as far as UX. So on a scale from 1, which is limited, to 6, which is user-driven, I placed us at around 3. Which is a great place to start this work. We certainly have buy-in from leadership and really a lot of excitement from our colleagues. And the fact that we had a UX unit now, and it wasn't just one person, positioned us really well. But there's also a ton of room for growth. And from there, I started mapping out the different areas within the portfolio, analyzing Natasha's, and determining how we could split our resources effectively and also where those gaps might be. We also spend a lot of time building awareness within the library, not only within, to communicate about our roles in the unit, but also about UX itself. It was a really good opportunity to go back to basics. And we found a lot of folks were really curious and interested in what we were doing. So once things were starting to feel a bit more established, we very carefully selected our first big project, which was to align our library website with the new UA web design standards. So this rebrand took us about 6 months from start to finish and included some student user research, leveraged a brand new partnership with the university's Central Digital Services team, and allowed us to try a number of different ways of collaborating with our internal technical teams. all of these learnings were really, really valuable because our next major undertaking is much, much, much larger in scope. As Natasha mentioned, we are migrating to a brand new services platform. We're just a small part of a library-wide group of staff and librarians who are looking at this project very carefully from all angles, and we have very different roles in bringing user experience to bear on this really complex work. So we're in the thick of it right now, but access 2025. Now to support the LSP project, we're also using this as an opportunity to pilot some new things. We're in a minute. We're trying some stuff out. So creating a UX working group and also a new role, which is a UX researcher role, to see if these are roles that might be viable for us moving forward. It's better than one UX person, but we're only 2 UX people. So trying to find that community and build up that support. And I was really taking some cues from colleagues, Josh Boyer and Robin Davis at NCSU, North Carolina State University. They really successfully implemented something like that there. So defining you/our approach to user experience. So throughout this year, we've had a lot of really, intentional conversations about what our particular brand of user experience is and how we want to define that for ourselves. And if this is, a road you're considering going down, I would strongly encourage you to do the same. After all, this work can be really unpredictable and overwhelming at times. And by cultivating a shared approach with intentionality, it can be really helpful and really empowering. And for us, there's goats on our slides, people. It's creativity, it's playfulness, it's, this bizarre spelling of user personas. They're all essential ingredients for good UX, believe it or not. We care very, very deeply about the work and our colleagues and our patrons, but we try not to take ourselves too seriously because we'll make mistakes, and that's okay. It also, UX inherently requires us to take risks and to embrace that sort of uncomfortable edge of what's new. So we have to try to work together on a daily, weekly basis to cultivate a safe space where we can try new things, even if they fail, and, hold space for audacious, sometimes kind of weird ideas. So you can do this too. If we can, you certainly can, no matter where you are with UX at your library. I have this one. Yes, sorry. So really quickly, it's really, it's important to know who your friends are, understand where your organization is at for this. Not every institution, library is going to be ready for this kind of change or shift. So really being aware and listening carefully for those cues and those kind of culture and climate indicators around you. Are people talking about data? Are people talking about users? If not, is this something that you could start to thread through conversations? It's also really key to find your people. Don't work on people right off the bat who may not totally understand UX, what it's all about quite yet. Seek out your allies, people who are excited about what you're doing. And remember that not everybody who works in UX has a UX title. Folks who might be service designers, business analysts, developers, public service frontline staff, all amazing folks to sort of bring into your circle. Yeah, and just remember, it's not always easy, and that sometimes it's those challenging times, like when your budget's slashed and all that you can actually do some of this work. And these small iterative changes can kind of lead you to those things where people go, oh, wow, this is actually really useful. We can see the change. We can see things getting better. Yeah, and we're very close. So why don't we go to the next? So just some tips as if you're looking at doing UX work, be persistent, celebrate your wins, stay curious, keep learning, start small, find your community and your support. And then doing UX off the side of your desk is valid. It does move the needle. It does create that change. I think both of us have had that experience in our jobs.
And if you focus on those strategic values and the outcomes and you show people what you've done, you'll get more people on your side. And then also learn from those skeptics, because sometimes the critical people have a lot of good things to say if you can sit and listen to them.
It's really hard to do these at these kind of conferences, but we wanted to offer everyone here a resource for anyone who is interested in trying a few different UX techniques or expanding your toolkit. You can apply these to small projects off the side of your desk, or combine them into much larger, more complex projects like some of the ones we've heard about today. So this is a resource called the UX Cookbook, and it was developed or is continued. Bob is continuing to develop it. Bob Liu and talented folks over at University of Arizona Library. It's all available online for free, and they've basically created different recipes or methodologies that you can use to cook up all sorts of tasty research and UX testing. So it's available either at this link or you can use your phone and access the QR code.
So thank you so much. This is kind of just only scratching the surface. So definitely reach out to us over email or talk to us in the next couple of days. We had probably a full hour that we could have really talked about this.
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations, including a UX unit in your library. And I wish you all the best with some of the new roles you're proposing. In terms of leadership buy-in, what were some of the specific things that got you to that point? If you have any advice for others who may want to do the same thing.
I really feel like that Student Library Advisory Council, I don't know if you have a similar thing, but having students talk to leaders, like I think having the leaders be able to listen to the students, because they're often very kind of like separate, right? They have other things in their minds. I just think that, or like frontline staff being able to have that kind of the ear of a leader, somehow creating that kind of situation where they're hearing it, because I just think as libraries, we tend to talk to each other so much more than we talk to the people who use our services. So that would be my only advice to you.
Just to add to that, I've worked in a number of different sectors and industries, and one of the things that I've always found is a really compelling and powerful way to get buy-in, no matter who you're talking to, but particularly for leadership, is if you do some of these really scrappy little UX kind of tests or projects, and you actually capture either, if you're able to, recordings, video, screen sort of demonstrations of someone actually struggling to use your product. And, that's obviously it's sort of the more negative side of things, but to be able to say, look, this is the reality. It is kind of driving home. And if you're not able to invite someone like, our AUO came and actually sat in on that session, you at least have that as kind of a back pocket, and you can use that as evidence and say, this is one way that we could approach that. Can you let me try? Those kind of things. So yeah, but those are just a couple of ideas. Thank you for the question. Are there any other questions?
I have a question about what are some methods you use to find like-minded colleagues in the library system? Because you had said find out others that are UX-minded. What are some of the techniques, approaches, methods that you use? Thank you.
Oh, that's such a good question. Maybe I'll start. This was one of the first things that I asked my awesome mentor when I got in. I was like, okay, the rest of us, I know there's us too, but so we're really lucky. I was taking a course and I was speaking to a woman, and she mentioned she had some training in anthropology. We continued the conversation, and she actually works as a service designer in our registrar's office, and there's a whole cohort of them. So I found there's a lot of sort of very informal kind of ways to just ask questions and get a sense of whether people have that understanding of it may not be the formal training in UX or service design, but that sense of, okay, the people who we're serving, that's where my head's at. That's where I want to try to solve those problems. And it's really kind of enabling that, or really offering that enthusiastic, like, yes, you see the world in sort of a similar way. So like, let's be a team. But there's also other formal ways. And I think we didn't get into it, but, working groups can be teams within our library. And, it really is kind of creating a space for people who want to get involved in that work. And maybe Natasha, if you want to speak about the web UX work that you've done too, just.
Sure. So as the web developer at the library, when I then became a librarian, I was a web developer. So I actually created a team of frontline staff to work on the website, to do content strategy, to do some of that, and I just kept pushing a little UX in there as well. And the thing is our frontline staff are doing UX work. They're doing it every time they talk to our users. But we're not gathering that data, like we're not doing anything with it. So in a way, it's like empowering that so that they can see what they're doing when they have a conversation with a student is really research.